Hi guys, so this is the second part of the factoring. As I said before, exactly the same as before. Do the same thing, okay? Nothing different, it's just an extra practice. So think of that way. Now, so if you take a look at it, again, remember the product is always A times C. So in this case, A is 3, B is 17, C is 10. Therefore, my P will be 30. So the only difference between this one and the previous one is that the product becomes bigger. Now, some of you may ask me, however, Mr. O, my tutor or the other teacher or the textbook doesn't really do the same way as what we did in the classroom last class. Well, that's because what we did last class is basically the same rule that we're going to be using for this type of factoring where the number gets a little bigger. Okay, so it's the same thing, same way. This way you don't get confused when to use which, and there will be only one general rule that you have to follow. Okay, so that's why I showed you that way instead of the other way that you may see from others' notes or other lessons or the YouTube video, etc., etc. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you cannot use that way. So then product is A times C, which is 30. The sum is now B, still the same way, and then 17. So hopefully you can see that they are exactly the same thing, but my product being a little bigger. So same rule. If you cannot figure out the two numbers immediately, well, use this. Okay, if you can figure this out, and that's good. So you do as you go. 1 and 30. Will that make 17 when I add? No, not really. Go to the next one. 2 and 15. Well, remember 30 divided by 2 is 15. So can you actually make 17 out of 2 and 15, either by adding or subtracting? Well, in this case, it kind of works. So then give that a try. So 2 and 15, 2 and 15. 2 plus 15 is indeed 17, and 2 times 15 is also indeed 30. So the pair that we have to work on or work with is 2 and 15. Therefore, then this becomes 3x squared plus 2x plus 15x plus 10. See, it's exactly the same as before. So then first is the first pair. Now the first pair, the common factor in this case, well, 3 and 2 doesn't have any common factor, but both terms have x, so we have x as a common factor. The exponent of the lowest exponent in this case is exponent of 1, so we don't have to put it. Then 3x squared divided by x, we know it is 3x. Now positive 2x divided by x is just a 2. Now the next we have this positive right after, so our sign will be positive as well, so don't forget it basically follows it. And then these two, so 15x plus 10, the common factor between 15 and 10. Remember, you're comparing apple to apple, okay? So you're comparing a number to number, not a number to a variable. So 15 to 10, then we know 5 is the common factor in this case. The 10 doesn't have the x, so then x is not the common ground, so it's not common factor anymore. So then 15x divided by 5 becomes 3x. Now positive 10 divided by 5 is then 2. Now hopefully you notice that what's inside of the brackets, we have the 3x plus 2 and 3x plus 2. They are exactly the same thing. So this becomes then 3x plus 2. And then rest, I'll just put it in black, x plus 5. Okay, so as you see, it's exactly the same, nothing so different. And you may ask me, why is there so much space? I don't know. Okay, I probably just put it for fun. Okay, now I want you to try example 2 on your own. I'll put the solution key up on the notes in the Google Classroom, not in the video, so that I can actually shorten the video in terms of watching it. But what I want you to do is I want you to actually pause it and then try it and then move on to the example 3. Okay. So then example 3. So this is pretty much the same thing. Again, remember the very first thing that you have to do when you're factoring is the common factoring. So 24x squared minus 22x plus 4. Well, in this case, we have 24, 22, and 4. And we have x squared, x, and no x at the end. So x is not part of the common factor. However, if you look at 24, 22, and 4, the common factor, the greatest common factor of these three numbers is 2. So factor that out first. So then this becomes 2. Then 12x squared minus 11x plus 2, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to do factoring this one. Same as before, okay? Same, exactly the same as before. So my product, well, not in black, blue following the highlighter. The product is then again A times C, so that will be 24. whereas your sum is just the b, so then that is negative 11. Remember, sign follows the number, okay? So then find the two numbers. Let's find the two numbers, and that's all that is. So go one at a time. 24, 1 and 24. Will that make 11 somehow by either adding or subtracting? Not going to happen. 2 and then 12. Will that make? Nada. Not a chance. What about 3 and 8? Because 24 divided by 3 is 8. Will that make somehow negative 11? Well, let's take a look. 3 and 8. 3 and 8. Now, in order for us to have positive 24, we can have both positive 3 and positive 8. But at the same time, we can also have negative 3 and negative 8. So keep that in mind. If your product is positive number, you have two options. Either being both numbers being positive or both numbers being negative. Okay, so you actually have to take a look at and think about that as you are going through the process of it. So then let's see whether that negative 3 and negative 8 will make negative 11. Well, it does, right? So then this becomes 2, then 12, oh, not you, then 12x squared minus 3x minus 8x plus 2. So this is why I asked you to do the times table over the Christmas break, because it does help you if you actually process and speed up the process of finding the factors. So then it will be 2. Then we can take these two, the first two, the common factor between 12 and 3 is 3. Both terms have x, so then let's put the x. Now the lowest exponent of the x squared and the x from the first two terms, the 12x squared and minus 3x, is 1 in the exponent, so that's it. So that's the common factor of the first two. Now 12x squared divided by 3x, 4x. Negative 3x divided by 3x, negative 1. Then we have the negative to start with, so your sign will be negative, okay? Now, then we do the same thing from negative 8x plus 2. Negative 8 and 2, the common factor is 2, so 2. The plus 2 doesn't have the x, so x is not the common factor anymore. So then we start the factoring. So negative 8x divided by negative 2 gives me positive 4x. Positive 2 divided by negative 2 gives me negative 1. And let me actually move this, what I factored, to the side slightly. So hopefully you see that I have 4x minus 1, 4x minus 1. So then this becomes 2. 4x minus 1. Whoops. And then you have 3x minus 2 from outside over here. Right? So then we are fully factored. Okay? So please do the common factoring. The reason why we do common factoring first is it makes our numbers much smaller in terms of the product. Think of this way. If you didn't do the common factoring to begin with, your product becomes 24 times 4. That is 96. Sometimes the number gets even bigger than 96. 96 already is a large number to find, right? The second is then later on you may end up with a factored form where you again have to do the common factoring at the end, which is kind of confusing. Okay, so that's why it is a lot easier for us to do the common factoring first and then get into the product and sum.